So one of the highlights of my week right now is getting to meet with several of you who are here right now. We meet on Wednesday nights, and we have been working together to articulate our stories of faith, our testimonies of how God has brought us to faith in Jesus. And I'll tell you, it is just so encouraging to hear other people, I got a couple pictures, to hear other people pairing up and sharing and articulating different moments where God was working in their lives even when they didn't realize it. I've gotten to watch several people, young and old, remember different moments in their lives where they said like, wow, like I didn't realize until now just how important that moment was for me. And what it's done for me personally, getting together and hearing these stories, has reminded me of different ways that God's grace has been working in my life and is still working to change me and shape me into the likeness of Jesus. Now, one of the things that has been common among all the stories that have been shared, and these are people who come from very different backgrounds. They have different personalities. Some of them grew up in church. Others didn't grow up in church. Some of them grew up in a very different world than the world that many of us live in right around here. But one of the things that's been so interesting is how they have all found different points of their individual stories that have been so relatable. In almost all of the cases, there's been a low point, and some of those points have been very low in ways that I pray that people won't experience lows like that. Others have had turning point moments where they have said, like, I need to do something different with my life. I wrote down a couple of these statements as I heard different points that help point people back to faith in God and His Son Jesus. One of them was, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't like what I saw. I reached a point where I didn't even like the look of my own face. I didn't like to be around me because I had become such a person that I was like, I don't even want to be that person. That's not the direction I want to go. Others have had moments like this where they realize, I should have been more mature than I was. Like, for too long, I kept living in immaturity. I kept practicing childish things. I had every opportunity. I just didn't make the choice to grow up. And others, it hit them whenever they started to have kids or when they started to have responsibility, and they say things like this: I had to step up because other people were depending on me. And maybe you can relate to one or more of these. I can relate in some ways to all three of them. But I was reminded of not too long ago, I had a friend and his wife who came to visit my wife and I, and we were young marrieds together and hadn't gotten to spend much time together since then. And as I listened to them talk about their life, one of the things that was really disheartening to hear is one of them said, I can see that y'all have grown up. I don't feel like I have. It's so easy to get stuck in ruts. You ever been stuck in a rut before in your life? Maybe some of you like multiple times. We really are like sheep. I almost brought this little video. Maybe y'all have seen this on social media. There's been a video that's floating around about how how sheep-like humans are. It's a sheep that is stuck in a ditch, and the shepherd goes down and is lifting that sheep. I mean, we're talking about a heavy sheep, lifting that sheep out of the ditch, and gets the sheep up, and he's like brushing off his hands and wiping off, and the sheep just takes off running, and it runs in a circle, and it runs right back into the ditch. And if you're laughing, you're like, yeah, we've seen that happen with animals before, but we also see that happen in our own lives because we just get stuck in ruts. Like, how did we end up back there again? Now, you know the old definition of crazy, right? Right? You know that several of you are nodding. I know you know this. For those of you who are young, here's the definition of crazy, okay? Crazy is doing the same things and expecting different results. Doing the same things over and over again, and I'm expecting different results. I keep doing this. I don't know why things aren't changing, because you're doing the same things and you're expecting something will happen. So especially those of you who are young, this is just a life principle, okay? If you want a different output, you must change your inputs. If you want a different result, if you want a different outcome, if you want a different life, if you want a different marriage, if you want better grades in school, if you want a better job, you get out what you put in. So you have to change the inputs, okay? We're in a series right now called The Jesus Church. And a lot of it has been stepping back and re-clarifying, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Where are we going? How are we going to get there? Where do we all fit into that, right? And just a little bit of review. We've talked about our mission that Jesus gave us. Our mission is to lead people into discipleship of Jesus. This unique relationship, an apprenticeship, where we want to be like him in every single way. We want to persuade others to see the value of being like Jesus and to put their trust in him. We've talked about our vision, like high-level vision, a vision of really an identity that we aspire for our church to have. We want to be the Jesus Church. That is, we want to be a church, a congregation of believers that is worthy to be called the bride of Christ, right? And we've brought that high-level vision down from about 30,000 feet to 10,000 feet. And we said, what does that mean? Well, this Jesus Church vision is to be a healthy church, to be healthy. Healthy church that inspires, equips, and sends disciple makers everywhere. Now, I know that whole sentence right there is packed with a lot of different things. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean? So we're slowing it down, and we're really only focusing on the healthy part, because healthy things are effective. Healthy things are maturing. Healthy things grow over time. So we're focusing on that part, and we recognized a few weeks ago that the health of a church is really dependent on its leaders and its culture. Its leaders and its culture. And as leaders right now, we're really focusing on what are the things that we need to be doing to ensure that the outcome is good for our church. What are the disciplines that we need to be embracing, that we need to be encouraging one another in, that we need to be practicing together for the health of our own selves and our families to mature and grow, and for the health of our whole church. Now, as a congregation, though, right now, we are focusing on culture. We're focusing on culture. Last week, we talked about our first aspirational cultural value, rest in God. Rest in God. Now, I know it was fall break this week, and many of you are traveling, many of you had different things going on, and you may have missed this message. I want to strongly, strongly encourage you to go back and listen to this. As I have begun to get feedback from several of you, you know that you are just too busy. You're just going and going and going, and even when you're not going, your mind is going and going and going. So I encourage you to go back and listen to that message. It can have a profound impact on your life. Now, regardless of where you are right now, whether you look in the mirror right now and you don't like what you see, or maybe you recognize it's time for you to start growing up a little bit more, or maybe you recognize that other people are depending on you, or maybe you just want to be part of creating and building a culture that reflects Jesus in every way, regardless of where you are on that spectrum. Today, I want to share with you our second cultural value that I promise you will totally change your life. I'm not exaggerating at all. And it's so simple. It's so simple, but like many things that are simple, it's not easy. It's actually going to require some change and some discipline in your own life. The second cultural value. Do what Jesus did. Do what Jesus did. Now, I know you're sitting here, you're like, yeah, we're in church. Like, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to do what Jesus did. I don't mean just like theoretically. I don't mean just like that you agree with what Jesus said, or you just believe what Jesus did. I mean that. It includes that. But I mean even more than that. I mean that you look at what Jesus did and say, how can I do that? That's what disciples do. So here's what I want to do, okay? Because I want to make this like ultra practical, even painfully practical. I want it to change your life as it's changed my life. I want to share with you a little 4-step, like super simple 4-step plan for how you can be more like Jesus, okay? Like I'm going to go through it really quick because it's almost common sense. It's so common sense that we often don't do it though. And then I want to give you 2 examples of how today, tomorrow, you can be more like Jesus, like immediately. Because that's ultimately the bottom line of what I'm trying to say right now. The bottom line of this whole message right here, I want to make sure you don't miss it. The bottom line is that you will be more like Jesus immediately when you do what Jesus did. That's the way it works. When you do the things that Jesus did, that's the model in which he chose. He could have chosen any other model. He could have been born at any other time. Instead, he was born in a certain time, in a certain place, where a certain model was used for transforming people into his likeness. Like, this is it right here. I want to give you just 2 simple things that you can do to put into practice immediately, okay? But I want to make sure you understand what I'm saying, okay? Many of you used to wear, I used to wear, I had like several different colors of them actually. What would Jesus do bracelets? Anybody wear one of those or have worn one of those? Anybody? The lights are, right? Okay, come on. I knew more people wore those. Those back in the day. You had all these different colors. You changed it out and match your outfit, right? What I'm trying to tell you right now is that's a great question. It's a super great question. And you need to ask that question because life is complicated. Life can be so complicated. You wonder, I want to be like Jesus. What would Jesus do in this situation? But what I'm trying to tell you is before you ask, what would Jesus do? Before you ask that, ask another question. Ask, what did Jesus do? What did he do? What did he do? Because learning to think like and act like and talk like and love like Jesus requires on-the-job training. This is the beautiful thing about it. You see, in our education system right now, you go to a classroom and you learn from a teacher and you learn and then you try to go and do it, right? That's not actually the way it works with discipleship. I mean, sure, there's talking and there's teaching, and Jesus spoke to crowds and he told them things that they could do. But discipleship, true discipleship, is I want to try to do it and learn from it. I want to watch what you do, and I'm going to try to do it, and what insight did I gain from that? You see the difference, right? What we're doing right now is not that. What we're doing right now is education in the West. There's a place for this. My hope is it inspires you to go and do. So here, I want to give you 4 steps, okay? I'm going to run through this like super quickly because, again, it's pretty common sense, okay? This is your brand new discipleship plan, all right? All right, I'm going to unveil it for you. Step number 1, read the Gospels. Like, just read the Gospels. Like, what does your week look like? How often do you really open up the Bible that you have sitting right there and read? Really read. And just like, what did Jesus do? What did Jesus do? See, this is the plan, not just to read and have a devotional. That's so good, and if you've got a time of the day that you do that regularly, you've got a devotional, keep doing that. Keep doing that. And read the Gospels. Number 2, note anything Jesus did. What did he do? Write it down. Note anything. That was interesting. Why did he do that? Write it down. Think about it. Number 3, identify what you can do now, even poorly. Even poorly. You see something that Jesus did, and you're like, I don't know that I can do that all that well. Don't worry if you can't do it well yet. Just try to do it. Again, this is Peter looking at Jesus on the water and saying, hey, if that's really you, Rabbi, if that is you, tell me to come out to you, because I want to do what my rabbi is doing. Identify what you can do now, even poorly. And number 4, start doing it. Does this sound pretty simple? No? For one person, it's simple. It's so simple. Why do we not do it? You see, here's what I think, and this is something that I wrestle with. I think about our strategic approach as a church. And necessarily, because we all have busy lives and we have jobs and some of us have kids or you have grandkids and you have things going on, necessarily we centralize on Sundays. We come together like this and we learn. But here's what I'm afraid of, especially for those of you who are young. What we're doing right now is not the pinnacle of our faith. It's not. This is a meeting that we're having right now. We're having a meeting of coming together so that we can go out and do. And we want this meeting to be uplifting and encouraging and educational, right? We want it to be all those things. But this right here, you don't have to wait and rely on what we're doing in here to be more like Jesus. You don't have to wait on what I say. You don't have to wait on what any of our other ministers have to say. We're here to support you in all of this, but you can go and do it. In fact, if you don't have a Bible, if you came in today and you're like, I don't even have a Bible. I don't even know a way that I can read the Gospels. We put Bibles out in all of these rows right here, and you are welcome to any one of them. Take 2 of them if you want. Just read it. Read the Gospels. Note anything Jesus did. Identify what you can do now, even poorly, and start doing it. Why? Because you'll be more like Jesus immediately when you do what Jesus did. Now, back in the spring, I had a class of people. We went through this and we practiced this together because sometimes it's good to do it together, kind of hold each other accountable, like, hey, I'm going to do it. Let's do this together, right? So back in the spring, we did this, and I gave out homework. And one of the things I would say is I give out homework, but I'm not taking it up at the end. I'm not grading it, okay? But I want you to intrinsically, not extrinsically, but intrinsically want to do it. Here's the homework, okay? At the time, we were going through the Gospel of Mark. We were reading the Gospel of Mark on Sunday mornings together in a series called Simply Jesus. So I said, I want you to read Mark 1, and I want you to follow those steps. Read the Gospels, note anything Jesus did, identify what you can do now, and start doing it, right? I want you to follow the steps, and then I want you to prepare to discuss. Now, when we came together to discuss, it's amazing that in one chapter, Jesus does so many different things. So just in one chapter, we see what he does, and you can start doing those. Here's a listing of the things that group of people were able to identify in just Mark chapter 1. We see that Jesus got baptized, Jesus submitted himself to the Spirit's lead, going to a place that probably he did not want to go, out into the wilderness to be tested and later tempted by Satan. Jesus faced Satan head to head. Jesus preached. Jesus invited the non-elite followers, not the greatest students. He invited the fishermen. Jesus went to the synagogue. Jesus taught in the synagogue. Jesus silenced and exorcised a demon. Jesus accepted his followers' hospitality. Jesus went to the sick and took her hand. That was Peter's mother-in-law. Jesus healed a woman with a fever. Jesus healed many sick people. Jesus drove out many demons. Jesus got up early to pray in a solitary place. He did even more than that. Jesus went to his audience. He didn't wait for them to come to him. He went to where they were. Jesus drove out more demons. Jesus touched a leper. Jesus healed a leper. Jesus told a healed leper to follow the law. Very interesting. In just chapter 1, Jesus does several of those things. Now, I can imagine you heard that listing, and I can imagine some of you are thinking like, yeah, there's quite a few things on there that I can't do. Like all the healings, all the driving out demons. I can't do any of that, and that's okay. There's other things that you can do. From that long list, as a group of people, we narrowed it down to 10 things that we could do now, even poorly. We looked at the list again. Number 1, get baptized. Number 2, submit ourselves to the Spirit's lead. Even when we don't want to go where the Spirit's leading, we can do that. I can remain open-handed. I can choose to not be planning my life so much that I'm not remaining open to where the Spirit is guiding me. We can face Satan, and we must. He is coming for you. He hates you. He wants to divide you from your church, from your family. He wants to destroy you. We can preach the gospel. It's not just the guy's job with the microphone, right? It's everybody's job to share the good news of Jesus, who came down from heaven and took on the sins of the world, my sins and your sins. He was cast out into the wilderness. Because he was cast out, we have been brought in. Everybody can preach the gospel. We can invite people to learn with us. We can attend synagogue. We can accept and practice hospitality. We can move toward the sick. We can get up early to pray in a solitary place. We can go to where people are to preach. We can begin doing the things that Jesus did. Now, I want to make this even more practical for this group of people right now, because at that time, we identified one of those things on the list that there's no reason we couldn't be doing this all the time. And I'll tell you, this one little thing has changed my life. I can't even emphasize enough how I'm not exaggerating. It's changed my life. It's number 9, to get up early to pray in a solitary place. Charles Duhigg wrote a book called The Power of Habit. The Power of Habit. This was, 12, 13, 14 years ago. I don't remember. It's a really great book. But one of the chapters, I've talked about it here before, is on the idea of keystone habits. Keystone habits. A keystone habit is very simply, it's a simple, repeatable behavior that drives other related behaviors. Okay? And some of the examples that he gives in the book, I've also practiced, like food journaling, right? You find yourself, you hadn't been eating all that good, and lately I have not been eating all that good. You start writing it all down. It's one thing to say, I'm watching what I eat right now, so I'm going to pass on the cake. It's another thing to write down what you eat every single day. And when you start writing it down, and you look back at it at night, you go, oh, I didn't realize I've been having ice cream twice a day. Right? When you see it right there, you're like, I can't deny it. And then the next day you go like, I don't want to write it down twice, but I'll write it down once, right? And then the next day you're like, well, I'll have half a scoop, right? And slowly, slowly, slowly you start to move in the direction of healthy things. You start eating better. And when you eat better, you start sleeping better. When you start sleeping better and you feel more energized, you're like, maybe I'll go for a walk. Maybe I'll go for a run. Maybe I'll go to the gym. All of a sudden, from this tiny, simple, repeatable behavior, food journaling, good things start to happen. Similar with brushing your teeth and hygiene, making your bed and keeping your private life ordered, right? There's several different things. Well, this one that Jesus does, I believe, is a keystone habit. And in my own life, it has become a keystone habit. And I've kind of packaged it, okay? But I want to go back to Mark 1:35 real quickly to show you how Mark lays it out like a recipe you can follow. Mark says that very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. You see how Mark just details it out. You want to be more like Jesus? Do you? Enough to get up 15 minutes earlier? 30 minutes earlier? I don't know. Here's the keystone habit, okay? I want to share 2 of them with you. And these were the 2 things that I was saying, like, I promise you they will change your life. These are the inputs that will change the output that you desire, personally and collectively as a church. Habit number 1. Get up early to start your day and go to a quiet place to pray. Get up early to start your day and go to a quiet place to pray. For me, I started practicing this several years ago. I don't do it every day. I don't do it every day. For a while, I did it every day, and that was really great, and then I got off. And then, like a lot of habits that you stop doing for a while, then I got really far off. And so identify, what is a sustainable rhythm? For me, it's about 3 or 4 times a week right now, right? And in times where I'm really stressed and I have a lot going on, I try to do it every single day. Because it's the type of behavior that will prepare you for a very difficult and challenging day ahead. Why early in the morning? Why? Because it's probably one of the only times that you're going to find a quiet place. Especially those of you who have kids, right? Before the world gets to you. Now, I know some of you talk about you got to have your morning coffee, right? And I know what you're thinking. I can't do anything before I have my coffee. I want to encourage you to stop letting coffee be a crutch in your life. It's going to take a little bit, but if you will choose to do this first before you get your coffee, maybe you'll feel a little fuzzy. Maybe you'll have a little headache, right? But if you will choose to do this first, to prioritize your relationship with Jesus, with the Lord, as Jesus did with his Father. I mean, think about it. If Jesus needed to do this to jumpstart his day, if Jesus needed to do this to draw near to his Father, how much more do we? For me, it was getting up It was going into the living room, or sometimes, if it was nice, going outside and getting down on my knees as flat as I could before the Lord, saying the Lord's Prayer. And moving out of the Lord's Prayer, it was just saying, Lord, I don't have the wisdom that I need. I don't. I recognize that I have nothing. I am nothing without the wisdom that you've given me. I can't lead myself well unless you give me wisdom. I can't lead my family well. If you want me to be a leader in your church, I have nothing. It's very similar to the parable that Jesus talks about in Luke chapter 11. And I think about it like this. It's about a person who has a friend come to him at midnight. And he's hungry. He's been traveling. And this person, they don't have any bread, right? So he goes to a neighbor's house, and he's pounding on the door. And he's saying, like, hey, I need bread. And Jesus says, it's not because of your friendship that the person will get up, but because of your bold audacity to keep knocking. And for me, that's what that morning prayer is like. Lord, I don't have any bread. I won't eat today unless you give me the bread that I need. My family will not eat today. I'm not talking about physically. I'm talking about like true, like spiritual food. Lord, I have to preach again this week. There's like a Sunday every week, Father. What am I going to give them? I don't have anything. Unless you give me the bread, I have nothing to feed them with. And moving out of that prayer of the Lord's Prayer and prayer for wisdom, it's saying, Lord, I need the courage. I need the courage to follow through on that wisdom. Because things are so complicated, and because I'm generally a nice guy, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and yet I know that the gospel is offensive. I know it is. Lord, give me the courage to declare it boldly as I should. Father, give me the courage to follow through when it gets hard. And then finally, Father, I pray that you will keep me humble. You'll keep me humble to remember that in the good times and the bad times, in the times where people are patting me on the back and saying, good job, in the times where people are discouraging me, that either way, you will just keep me humble. And remember that I had nothing to begin with except what you gave me. I'm telling you, this getting up early to start your day and going to a quiet place to pray, it will change your life no matter what. Because it's an input that will bring about an output of drawing near the Lord. Now, I want to come back to a scripture that Jordan read for us just a minute ago. I want to read the whole thing. This is for habit number 2, okay? For habit number 2, if you have your Bible, you can read along with me in John chapter 13. My guess is that many of you know this story very well, and some of you maybe you're about to hear it for the very first time. It is a picture, it is an image, it is a vision of how Jesus served his own disciples and how he's modeling for us how we should be serving one another. This is John chapter 13, verse 1. Now, before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from the world to his Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. During the supper, when the devil had already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going back to God, Jesus rose from the supper. He laid aside his outer garments, and taking a towel, tied it around his waist. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, do you wash my feet? Jesus answered him, what I am doing you do not understand now, but afterward you will understand. Peter said to him, you shall never wash my feet. Jesus answered him, "If I do not wash you, you have no share with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "The one who has bathed does not need to wash except for his feet, but is completely clean, and you are clean, but not every one of you." For he knew who was to betray him. That is why he said, "Not all of you are clean." When he had washed their feet and put on his outer garments and resumed his place, he said to them, "Do you understand what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you're right, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should also do just as I have done to you." Listen to that again. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. So habit number 2 is this, and there are many ways to practice this, okay? Habit number 2 is to do something for someone that no one wants to do. Do something for someone that no one wants to do. What is that thing? What's that thing in your house that no one wants to do? Unload the dishwasher? Clean the toilet? Right? What's that thing on your team at work that no one wants to do? What's that thing in the church? You see, Jesus washed stinking feet as an example for us to do something for someone that no one wants to do. And you can be ultra creative with this. And I'm encouraging you to do it. I'm encouraging you to do it and to not draw attention to yourself. That is a way that Satan will work his way into this. And he'll make you feel good about it. Ah, you did that. Well, I mean, did it actually happen if nobody knows about it? Right? I need to show off a little bit. I need to tell someone. I need to slide that in. Oh yeah, I did that. I did that thing. Right? No. Do something for someone that no one wants to do, and don't tell anybody at all. Let it be secret service to that person and to the Lord. Your Lord, who sees what you do in secret, he will reward you, and I promise you, his reward is far greater than the reward you will get from your own pride or from feeling good from some others. I promise you, it's so much better. Why do I say to do these things? Again, the bottom line is this. You will be more like Jesus immediately when you do what Jesus did. Listen again to what Vivian read for us a minute ago, right? She read from Mark chapter 8. This is Jesus calling out to the crowds who were excited to follow him, crowds who wanted to see a miracle, crowds who wanted to eat the bread that Jesus broke, maybe see again Jesus turn water to wine. Like, what can he do for me? And Jesus says, listen, Mark 8, it says, "Then he called to the crowd along with his disciples and said, 'Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me.'" So here's the self-evaluation question, okay? Evaluate yourself now. In what ways am I denying myself to practice what Jesus did and taught? In what ways am I denying myself? Saying, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this instead. In what ways are you doing that? Or have you gotten stuck in a rut and you don't even realize it yet? You just gotten stuck in a rut in life, and it's usually because life goes well, and life is going pretty well, and so you don't think about this until life is not going well. And then a change really needs to happen. I'm telling you, before that time, start now in doing what Jesus did. Again, here's 2 simple ways you can practice it. Get up early to start your day and go to a quiet place to pray. Do something for someone that no one wants to do. Regardless of what you actually do, whether you put these into practice or you do something else, practice this second cultural value. Just do what Jesus did. Read the Gospels. Note anything Jesus did. Identify what you can do now even poorly and start doing them. And I promise you, your life will change. You will experience growth. No, life's not going to be perfect. You're not going to get rich doing this. In fact, you're going to give up things. But it's all going to be worth it. I promise you, it's all going to be worth it. Because when we get into the new heavens and the new earth, where righteousness dwells, I imagine we may look back just briefly, at the cost of following Jesus and putting our trust in him that got us to that point. And it's all going to be worth it. We're going to be running through and saying, like, I told you so, it was worth it. Everything you gave up wasn't even a sacrifice when you look back at it now. Jesus gave up everything for us. Surely we can get up 15 minutes early. Jesus gave up everything for us. Surely we can serve someone and not draw attention to ourselves. Just do what Jesus did. Do what Jesus did. Do what Jesus did. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, thank you so much for Jesus and his example. An example of service that is hard. An example of service that we shy away from. I know my own tendency, Father. I want to be recognized for working hard and giving things up. But Father, I pray that we will realize that that is garbage. The praise of other people, of our husbands and wives, of our children, of our boss, of our whatever, it's all garbage. It's nothing compared with your favor. I pray that your favor will come upon us, that we will deny ourselves and take up our cross and follow Jesus, that every day we will try to follow him closer and closer. What can we do that he did? I pray all these things in the name of Jesus. Amen. Let's stand and sing.